I think that it's time for a fresh start in the North, and I absolutely support Shirley Robinson in her candidacy.
Tonight, when does a non-partisan political group turn partisan?
But the root is where the magic of this plant is. It's called a styptic, and what that means is it stops bleeding on contact.
Some of the old ways are taught to new students in an urban setting.
For me, the bowls are, as an installation here, they're this constellation of people. They're the constellation of women over the course of 250 years.
And this artist is taking action to see Métis women get the recognition they deserve. Good evening, I'm Dennis Ward. Welcome to APTN National News. It is day 19 of this 36-day federal election campaign, and Nunavut has to be one of the most interesting ridings this time around. The incumbent is out, and there are no party politics territorially. Nunavut could choose any party, and have before. With more, here's Ken Driscoll.
When Nunavut MP Mumila Kakak decided she didn't want to run for a second term, Nunavut's one federal seat was back in play. At the territorial level, Nunavut has no party politics under the consensus system used here. In the last decade, Nunavummiut have elected Conservative, Liberal, and NDP MPs. So instead of a blood-on-the-floor partisan political fight, these elections are more like extended job interviews, conducted over 1/5 of Canada's landmass. Here outside of the Iqaluit post office, we asked residents what they thought the biggest issues in the election were.
I hear a lot of the candidates talking about housing and mental health, which is important, but I agree with them, and I think one of the biggest things that we should be focusing right now and for the next, until the elections and for a while, is housing.
Housing is most important.
And why?
It's just because everybody's couch surfing, and they shouldn't be doing that. They should be having housing. My daughter even got out of the list herself because she's waited too long.
Housing shouldn't be a surprise. It was a major focus of the outgoing MP as well. It's also one of the 15 priorities for Inuit this election as outlined by ITK, Inuit Tapiri Kanatami, the Inuit organization that represents Inuit all over Canada. Under the Liberal government, ITK has had a more public role than under previous governments. When Trudeau appears on a Nunavut stage, he's usually surrounded by members of the Inuit organizations. ITK President Nathan Obed was in Iqaluit when the Prime Minister landed earlier this week. At election time, he couldn't really stand next to the Prime Minister because what if another government won? But he did show up. Right here. So we read out some of ITK's 15 items to Inuit and Iqaluit, and it seems like ITK read the room well. Housing is there. First up, ITK wants an Inuit-led suicide prevention program.
Inuit-led suicide prevention strategy is very important because it's led by Inuit for Inuit because we know ourselves the best.
Oh, wow. That should be most important, first of all. Besides housing, suicide prevention should be number one.
ITK calls for more food security in Inuit Nunangat. You hear that in Nunavut too.
Food security is very important up here. As we all know, we only have fly-in and fly-out communities, and we are very much different than the rest of Canada, but we cannot forget that we are part of Canada.
The issues facing Nunavut are easy to identify and a whole lot harder to fix. After all, if they were easy to fix, some government would have done it already. With Election Day looming, Nunavummiut now have to decide which candidate and party have the best plan. Ken Driscoll, APTN National News, Iqaluit.
Well, Nathan Obed may have stayed off to the side, but two First Nations organizations in Manitoba will support a Liberal candidate. They made the announcement at a meet and greet with NDP leader Jagmeet Singh on the campaign trail. For more, here's Daryl Stranger.
We do our part to try and engage our communities to make informed decisions on whatever political decisions they make. Fundamentally, the Assembly is nonpartisan, but we support all strong leaders.
Assembly of Manitoba Chiefs Grand Chief Arlen Dumas made his organization's position clear at an NDP leader meet and greet late last week in Winnipeg. Support First Nations candidates first.
To all of our allies and everybody watching, we always have to support our First Nations candidates in the spirit of Elijah Harper. Keep in mind that Elijah Harper was flying a specific color who the majority of the party had made a decision without the involvement and participation of First Nations, and Elijah chose not to toe the party line, and Elijah actually preserved and protected this country and this Constitution on behalf of all of us together, and we can all celebrate in that today. So in the spirit of Elijah Harper, we will always advance our First Nations candidates.
He endorsed the Liberal candidate who was running in the Churchill-Keewatin-Nukasky riding.
On that level, being a elected official for the past 2 decades, I think that it's time for a fresh start in the North, and I absolutely support Shirley Robinson in her candidacy. Thank you.
I concur with that comment.
Robinson is from Pimachikamak Cree Nation. She's facing a tough incumbent. NDP candidate Nikki Ashton won for the 4th time 2 years ago. She provided APTN with an emailed statement. I have been honored to receive support from so many Indigenous people in the 5 elections that I have been a candidate. I am seeking their support again to continue the fight for improvements to health, housing, education, and infrastructure. The fight for justice for Indigenous and Northern communities continues. 75% of the people in the riding are Indigenous. MKO, an organization that represents 26 Manitoba First Nations, also chimed in, and Grand Chief Garrison Satie supported Dumas.
We have a vested interest in what happens in Canada when it comes to our Indigenous people, and we continue to support Indigenous people as they run. And our people are nonpartisan, as you said, but of course we will support our Indigenous people wherever they are.
But the Southern Chiefs organization will not be endorsing a candidate. Grand Chief Jerry Daniels said they will wait and see.
We had endorsed previously, but because we've seen a lot of humming and hawing this year, we're not taking an endorsement position this year. We've had chiefs who are supportive of particular candidates. We are, waiting to see what sort of action can take place with the different parties. We may see a change in government. Who knows? It's sort of up in the air right now.
APTN News reached out to Robinson and the Conservative candidate Charlotte Larocque, but did not hear back as of airtime. Daryl Stranger, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
We'd like to hear what you think about this federal election campaign. Here's how you can continue the conversation. You can send us an email to news@aptn.ca or leave a comment on our website. That's aptnnews.ca. You can also find us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok. Follow APTN News to join the conversation and see our latest stories. And a reminder that we will have coverage of both the French and English language leaders debates next week. Included in that will be pre- and post-debate coverage right here on APTN for both Wednesday night's French debate and next Thursday night's English debate. Time now for a quick break. Stick around, there's more to come.
Live from Gatineau. Don't miss the federal leaders debate. Trudeau, O'Toole, Blanchet, Singh, Paul. The party leaders face off about Canada and its future. The Federal Leaders Debate. Commercial free. Thursday, September 9.
Welcome back. A new class action lawsuit has been launched over the practice of birth alerts. The suit was filed in the British Columbia Supreme Court this week. The filing represents BC families, but is part of a national litigation effort. Birth alerts are notices put on a pregnant patient's file. They require a hospital to contact Child Protective Services when a woman gives birth, and they can lead to the infant being apprehended at birth. The class action alleges the practice is a violation of privacy and constitutional rights. Nikita Steele is the primary plaintiff in the class action lawsuit. Well, for more on this story, we're joined by lawyer Elisa Lombard, who is part of the legal team behind the class action. Ms. Lombard, thanks so much for being with us. For those who don't know, can you just give us a brief on, what birth alerts are and how they work in Canada?
Sure. So birth alerts are a practice that are usually engaged by child and family services agencies. They are issued on the file of a pregnant woman. And that information is then somehow disclosed to a hospital, who then alerts authorities when a child is born, or perhaps not. But the birth alert remains on the file. That information is shared, and often or sometimes the child is apprehended in hospital. And so that is essentially the context underpinning the birth alert practice.
Now, a number of provinces over the last year or two have announced that they're stopping these alerts. Why is a class action still necessary at this point?
Well, first, as we know, sometimes practices cease formally occurring. It doesn't mean that they actually cease occurring. And so we do think that this practice still carries on. But most importantly, there are many women and children and families who have been terribly impacted by this practice, who have experienced tremendous trauma as a result of it. And they have their right to their day in court and to justice.
In Manitoba, it used to be pretty common that there was a child apprehended like every single day of the year, or more than 365 a year. How widespread is this practice, and is the class action going to be national in scope?
Indeed, it is national. There's a consortium working on it with very competent lawyers in class actions and in constitutional rights and Indigenous rights from across the country. Clear from British Columbia through Saskatchewan and Manitoba. Often we'll be working on those particular provinces, as well as Ontario, Quebec, and the Maritimes. And so it is national in scope.
And so how can women and families come forward to join the class action?
Well, there is some information available, and that has been circulated by way of a press release. And depending on where they are situated, where they are located, and where this may have happened, if they are located in British Columbia, they will want to get in touch with Camp Fioronte Matthews Mogerman. If they are in Alberta as well, that's who they'll want to contact. If they are in Manitoba or Saskatchewan, they'll want to get in touch with us. It's Magnus Lombard. If they're in Ontario, with Waddell Phillips. In Quebec, Belleau Lapointe. And if they are in the Maritimes, the Burklaw Group.
Well, Ms. Lombard, we'll have to leave it there, but appreciate you taking some time for us here today.
Thank you for having me.
To the COVID-19 pandemic now, and the Mohawk community of Ganawage has declared a red alert after an outbreak in COVID-19 infections. The number of active cases in the community more than doubled in the last 2 days. The Mohawk community now has 31 active cases, and officials say many cases in the recent outbreak are linked to the fast-spreading Delta variant. And many are suspected to be from sports events and travel to a reserve up north. A Yukon First Nation just finished in an ambitious project that will cut their dependence on diesel. The Vuntutwichin First Nation in Old Crow relies on diesel generators for power, but that's all changed thanks to a new solar energy project. Shrivya will run from March until September and will cut their diesel dependence by almost a quarter. That will also result in about 5 million liters worth of diesel that won't have to be flown into the community over the next 25 years. Chief Dana Dijatram said the change is noticeable already.
The whole community, you can hear the difference. You can see the difference with the sun reflecting off of the solar panels. And this is a warm welcome to our rural First Nation, which is actually at the cutting edge of these technologies in the Arctic Circle.
Time for another quick break. Still to come, we'll take a look at a new hands-on workshop taking place in Edmonton.
So participants will get to not only learn about our relationships, they're going to experience one of those relationships by both harvesting rose hips and then creating their own basket to take home.
Welcome back. Time now to take a look at our photo of the day. Our viewer CJ Lessard was in Prince Albert National Park, located in Saskatchewan, and sent us this photo of a bull elk shedding the velvet from his antlers. Nice work. Thanks to all of our contributors, and keep those photos coming by sending your pics to share@aptn.ca, and then tune in each day to see our next photo of the day. Let's take a look at Friday's weather forecast. Starting on the East Coast, 18 and showers for Halifax, 13 with rain in Charlottetown. Sunny and 11 for Nain, cloudy and 12 for Happy Valley Goose Bay. 24 in Montreal, 19 with cloud in Chibougamau. 21 and cloudy for Sault Ste. Marie and North Bay. Showers for Thunder Bay and a high of 20, 19 with rain in Sioux Lookout. 22 with showers for God's Lake, 1 degree cooler and rain in Norway House. 23 for Winnipeg, Gimli and Brandon. Sunny and 22 in Regina, cloudy and 21 for Saskatoon. 19 with showers in Meadow Lake, 17 with rain in La Ronge. Over in northern Alberta, sunny and 21 in high level, 19 with showers in Fort McMurray, 23 in Medicine Hat, sunny skies and 21 in Edmonton. Showers and 20 for Vancouver and Victoria. 20 in Prince George, 16 with rain for Dease Lake. 17 and rain for Old Crow and Whitehorse. 17 in Yellowknife, 22 in Fort Simpson. +4 for Sax Harbor, showers and 14 in Paulatuck. 11 with rain for Arviette, 10 and showers in Whale Cove. -1 with snow in Resolute, rain and 3 in Arctic Bay. Métis women are being celebrated at a new Winnipeg Art Gallery exhibit, which pays tribute to 250 plus years of Métis women. APTN's Michelle Karlinzig has more.
Some of them are just sort of black and white. I smoke fire them.
Tracy Charette Fair has been working with clay for years.
Carved designs.
But what started out as a hobby has now turned into a tribute to her heritage.
Yeah,
Her exhibit, Heartbeat of a Nation, at the Winnipeg Art Gallery, Kalmiuk, is a celebration of Métis women.
I really felt that Métis women hadn't really been recognized throughout the history. You know, we have Louis Riel and Gabrielle Dumont and, you know, many leaders, but women were kind of auxiliary, like they weren't really featured in much of the history. So I thought I wanted to recognize people like my mother and my grandmother and my great-grandmother who really survived a lot of difficulties, you know, over many years, and I wanted to highlight them.
Fair traced her grandmother's Métis heritage back to 1770. Last year marked 250 years, and so she made 250 clay wood smoked bowls. The bowls represent, in her words, the domestication of the women who birthed the Métis Nation.
For me, the bowls are, as an installation here, they're this constellation of people. They're the constellation of women over the course of 250 years. So I see them as people and as beautiful in that they're all different. They're different sizes, they're different colors, they're different makeup, they're, you know, like there's just so much uniqueness.
The exhibit also features tapestry from her family's history and pays homage to her aunties.
They grew up feeling very ashamed of who they were, and so this is to take that and to transform it into something that we should all feel, is this pride in our heritage and who we are.
When the exhibit is over, Fair will gift the bowls to Métis women across Manitoba. Heartbeat Nation is on now and runs from August 20th to September 16th. Michelle Karlenzig, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
Fort Edmonton Park recently reopened in July after a big renovation. One key addition was the Indigenous Peoples Experience, which has now started to offer hands-on workshops. APTN's Chris Stewart has that story.
It's a new partnership with the fort, and so we're looking at potentially offering something like this again next year in the future, but this is a trial run to see what the response is from the community and to go through the process of developing these experiential workshops.
Natalie Pepin runs workshops about Métis culture and way of life, both online and in person. Tonight, she's at Fort Edmonton Park teaching how to harvest plants, including rosehip berries, which make a nice tea. Students will also learn to make birch bark baskets. Pepin says it's important to keep the traditional ways alive, and they still work today.
We'll be using birch bark and spruce roots and willows to create our baskets. So participants will get to not only learn about our relationships, they're going to experience one of those relationships by both harvesting rose hips and then creating their own basket to take home.
A rainy evening didn't dampen spirits as the group learned about traditional plants.
But the root is where the magic of this plant is. It's called a styptic, and what that means is it stops bleeding on contact. So you powder the root, and then you have that in your first aid kit for emergencies.
After harvesting the rose hips, the group went inside to learn birch bark basket making, baskets that would hold the harvested plants. It's not easy for beginners, but the group caught on quick.
I'm amazed that this is staken together and that it hasn't broken apart yet. I may even be able to put berries in this at the end.
This attendee was the first to complete his basket, and it looks perfect.
I learned about my culture and about building these baskets and using everything from the land and putting it all together to see what my ancestors used to do.
He says he will be back soon.
Amazing. I'm really looking forward to actually coming back and bringing my kids here so that they can experience this as well.
This workshop and another one which teaches participants how to use porcupine quills and wolf willow seeds will run into October. Chris Stewart, APTN National News, Edmonton.
Pretty cool workshop there. People living in Saskatoon will see a new ceremonial teepee standing in their city. Federation of Sovereign Indigenous Nations, which represents 74 Saskatchewan First Nations, built their teepee outside their headquarters. The poles for the structure were flown in from Bella Bella, British Columbia, and are made of wood that's approximately 400 years old. The logs arrived in Saskatoon through a partnership with the television show Timber Kings. FSIN Chief Bobby Cameron says the teepee will stand for another 400 years to come and represent pride and unity for First Nations people. Quite a project there. Well, that's all the time we have for your APTN National News for this Thursday. For news anytime, you can visit our website, aptnnews.ca, and never miss a story by downloading the APTN News app. I'm Dennis Ward. Thanks for joining us. Have a great night.